Hello, everyone, and welcome back to I'm Not the Book Expert, but She Is. This is a continuation of our episode from last week. So, if you have not listened to the first half of The Merciful Crow, please go and check out that episode before continuing on with this one because we are picking up right where we left off and we are talking about parts 2 and 3 of The Merciful Crow by Margaret Owen today. Here you go. And that's the end of part 1, and we have them then running away from the people that are hunting them.
They flee Cheparoke, and when they finally kind of get their bearings, they come up with a plan to go to Trigavoy, to meet with Master General Draga.
Yes, who we know is Jasimir's aunt.
Right. They fall into a trap at Gerbanyar.
I don't remember.
You're the one who listened to the audiobook,
I
Rachel.
know, but I didn't listen to that part.
They go to another settlement where there's plague beacons because even though Fi's band is now just her, Tavin, and Jasimir, she's like, if I do not answer a plague beacon, I will be answerable to the Covenant. The Covenant is kind of like...
It's a mythological force.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Fates, but not...
It's kind of like, if you read stuff like the Iliad, it is like how fate works in the Iliad.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a being, it's more of a force that controls things. I think that's the best way to put it. But all that to say, Fi cannot ignore a plague beacon. But of course it is a trap, and they are trying to escape Tatterhelm and his vultures. So then they're being tracked by Tatterhelm and his gang of vultures, who are holding the crows hostage, by the way. They're holding Pa and the others hostage. They start traveling through the mountains. They leave the roads, which
Tavin
has to convince Vi, like, if we keep staying on the roads, we're either A, going to get caught, or B, you're going to see another plague beacon, and you're going to have to answer it. And this way, we won't have to see plague beacons. And Vi's like, I can't do that, but... she kind of comes to the realization that keeping the oath is more important at this point. So they start traveling through the mountains, off the roads, they go off-roading, and there's a lot of, Fi is using a lot of her teeth. She keeps burning through teeth to try and hide them from the scent, from the tracking of the vultures.
And that's what Pa told her to do.
Right.
He said,
burn as many
teeth. It doesn't matter. Just get out, get alive.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
stay alive.
Okay.
Stay alive. Get alive.
Get
alive.
I mean, that's kind of what she's doing, right?
Yeah.
She's making herself known, right?
At some point, Fi is so burned out from just staying awake all the time and using her magic so much that she just kind of collapses, and Tavin ends up carrying her. Because, like, she's the one who's keeping them all safe. But eventually, even she can't do it anymore, and they have to stop and rest.
And then that's when we have another turn in the story.
Yes.
However, before we reach that turn, I want to talk about lace root seed.
Oh, yes! Oh. That is very relevant here, in fact.
It is very relevant here.
I'm going to preface this because I think I know what scene you're looking for.
Yes.
I'm trying to do some mind reading across the table here, as you can tell. So crows, because they don't really have homes, they do have shrines throughout the country, right? And these shrines are kept hidden from other castes. And they are places where crows can go to rest, go to replenish their supplies, and they also leave... What's that word, Rachel?
Viatic.
Thank you. I always want to say viatic for some reason. Viatic. They leave Viatic, take Viatic, and continue on their journey. So now that they've fled Cheparoke, they have nothing.
With nothing but the teeth and the crow sword. And Tavin's sword. Swords. He has two. Two short swords.
They go to a crow shrine to replenish. And I think that's the scene that Rachel wants to tell us about.
Yes, I do. Page 170 to 171.
Take it away.
Hey! Leah was right there. So Fi paused, counting up turns of the last moon. She was about to spend 3 more weeks dragging the lordlings about the hills. That made for a different sort of challenge. Can you spare any lace root seed? The keeper's gray brows rose. She flipped the latches on a worn trunk and dug inside. You afraid of getting with child, too? Tavin knocked over a pot of sandal nails and swore under his breath. Vi tried to ignore the pointed look the keeper gave him. She did not succeed. A flush nipped at her ears and neck. I've no time for bleeding, let alone running. So, let alone having sex.
Yes. That's the slang used here.
Yes. But I would like to read my annotation because Tavin is known for kind of being a flirt.
That's a light way of putting it.
He's a rake. He's a rake. I learned that term recently. Thank you, Bridgerton. He is known for sleeping around.
Gotcha. I was like, I don't know what this
I know. Well,
word
I was
means.
getting there. Okay.
Okay. I don't watch Bridgerton. I'm sorry.
You probably would not like Bridgerton.
I don't think.
So my annotation reads, Tavin, honestly, it's like you've never bedded anyone. You literally talk to Fi about the people you have slept with. And that was my annotation because he's literally like tripping over himself because they're talking about
the notion of
having sex.
Get your crap together, Tavin.
We love you, but like, bruh.
Pull yourself together.
Edna
You're
mode
embarrassing
moment.
yourself.
But
that does become relevant.
Yes, because after Tavin carries her to a cave with Jasimir, they end up having sex.
Tavin and Fi.
Yes.
Just gonna clarify there.
Yes.
Jasimir's sleeping in the cave somewhere.
But he knows.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of privacy out here in the wilderness.
No, not at all.
So that happens. I actually really like the scene, by the way.
I do too.
Like,
it
is very well written.
Yes, and
it is
gentle.
Yes. It's page 242.
Oh
my gosh, I'm right there! Dang it, Leah! How are you so good at this? You should be the co-host.
Oh, that's so funny.
But I was just going to say, I like the mention of consent being involved.
Yes. It's very small, but yes.
And it's not necessarily pointed out, like, who asks and who responds, but I like that is mentioned, because that is, again, not something that was necessarily in the YA that I kind of grew up around. Like, it was just kind of like, you just, like, do the thing, you have the sex, and there's no need to ask, because you're just so madly in love, you can read each other's minds, and I just really appreciated that. I also appreciated the beginning of the next chapter where it's kind of like after.
Because it's not fade to black, but it's not explicit.
Yes. This is still a young adult novel.
Yeah.
And this is it feels like par for the course for a young adult novel.
Yes. It's an older YA. It's not a, like...
This is not for your middle schooler.
No. Not for, like, a 14-year-old. Yeah. But, like, 15, 16, 17...
But I'm also not here to police your reading.
No, not at all.
If it is age relevant, you should read it. But I like that afterwards, Fi and Tavin also have a conversation where Tavin is like, are you okay? Like, was that okay? And I think that just shows care in a way that I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here.
It shows that their relationship is more than just the sex.
Yes. That is what I was trying to say.
Can I point out a really small detail?
Of course.
Just above that? He accidentally woke her up by humming, and he's been humming like their entire trip.
He hums in the morning.
Yes, that becomes relevant later on, but I just really like the idea of like little soft boy Tavin humming in the background as people are sleeping.
Soft boy who could totally murder you with a look, but you know.
I don't see the problem here.
Rachel and Leah both made a face of like, well, if that's how it has to be, I'm okay with that.
If it's how I go, it's how I go.
If I have to die at the hands of a hot guy, then that's fine.
Can you tell that we're sisters? Tavin would fit in my favorite category of men.
Yep.
And for those of you who don't know what I'm saying, he has a very strong moral compass and always puts himself on the wrong side.
We've talked about this several times.
Yes, we have.
Previous episodes.
One of us is lying, one of us is next, vicious and vengeful. I think the only one we didn't talk about that
is Warcross and Wildcard.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little bit with,
Tremaine?
Yes, Tremaine.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not Roshan,
it's the other one.
Boy. Tremaine. We did talk about that a little bit with Tremaine.
Yes, but not nearly as much as we did with the other two
but
duologies.
So they have the sex.
But
and
then I'm sticking with this post-sex scene.
That's a sentence.
So it's Tavin talking, and he goes, I wish I could do it all right. Flowers, poetry, awkward conversations with your parents. You know, courtship. Told you I don't truck with those, she said through a yawn. Can't even read poetry. I'll read it to you. I guarantee it will be terrible, he grinned. There will be 19 verses, your eyes will absolutely be likened to starless skies, so will your hair. I'm not very creative. Stick with flowers, Fi wrinkled her nose. Or knives. Weapons, that's what hawks give one another anyway. Half of Dragovoy's armory comes from the year the Master General chose her spouses. Tavin's like, I know that this isn't how it's supposed to go, even for crows.
Also, I just want to point out that Tavin has it absolutely right. You should always give girls knives or weapons.
100%.
100%. They last longer than flowers, and they're much more useful.
Or
if anyone in the audience wants to romance me, you can send me daggers. I will gladly take them. Your feelings will probably not be reciprocated, but I will appreciate the gesture regardless.
And if we want to be sponsored, or if you want to sponsor us, and you are some sort of, like, sword maker, blacksmith, we're here for it. We are 100% here for it. I was getting there, okay?
I will gladly be sponsored by a blacksmith.
Thank you. Or like a Renaissance festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take that too. Yeah.
Good. Glad we had this conversation.
But just like, I think that shows how much Tavin really cares, especially because he's saying, I don't just want this to be about sex.
Right.
He's like, I wish that I could do this right, but circumstance prevents that from happening.
Yes. And it's a good thing they did all this now, because, like, in the next chapter, Tavin gets caught. Actually, that's not entirely true. He sacrifices himself.
Get it right, Maggie. Oh, I found one more page where I had no annotations.
Okay. How many are we at?
2. So now they're traveling across the hills. She slaps the prince. It's great.
He deserved it.
I literally wrote, he deserved it.
I think I probably wrote that too. Let's find
Page
out.
253, sorry.
253.
Transpose
I said, good, Jazz is acting like a child.
I wrote, he deserved it.
So, we're on the same wavelength.
However, on the page previous, I'm going to swear, I said, stop being a jackass, Jazz. I said jackass because his name is Jazz, and like, thank you. And then this is also where my pen ran out of ink.
Right before the end of
literally
the first part.
right before. Second part.
Leah, do you want to tell us what happens at the end of the second part?
I'm so upset about it. I don't like it.
What happens?
They get caught by the vultures, but it's so sad. I can't handle it.
How did they get away?
Tavin sacrifices himself. He, like, pushes Fi and Jazz off this bridge, and, like, it's a rope bridge or something, I think. Cuts it, and then he gets caught by these vultures. And for the past, I don't know how much time, week or so, Fi has been using one of her teeth to make sure Tavin looks like the prince.
I think it was a peacock tooth.
Yeah. Because he's the body double. So when he gets caught, the vultures are like, oh, that's the prince. And they're like, oh, we have to test to make sure. And they
do something.
We don't find out about what it is until later.
And they're like, yes, this is him. And then they take him. So now Fi is left alone with Jasimir.
And they have been fighting even with Tavin there because somebody is jealous.
Jasimir is jealous that Fi is getting Tavin's attention. Not in a jealous romantically.
Before we move on, I do want to say one thing because it comes from a conversation that Tavin and Fi were having, and Tavin said to Fi, "You make me believe I can do something better with my life than die." And then that comes back in Fi's memory as Tavin is cutting the rope. And that just...
And Tavin is doing this to protect the two people he cares about the most. Protecting Jasimir and protecting Fi.
100%.
And I love that. Anyway, then we get to part 3 and we're all very upset.
And there's a lot of brooding.
A lot of fighting between Jasimir and Fi. Because Jasimir's like, we have to go back for Tavin. And Fi is like, now Fi has taken on the role of Tavin in Checkbook, right? Now she has to be the one and say, get your crap together, Jazz, and we are going to get you to the city even if I have to drag you there. And eventually Jazz does cooperate.
Eventually.
But eventually the two of them kind of reach this not happy middle ground, but this, like, tolerable middle ground.
Like an understanding.
Yeah. After they've, like, almost gone to blows.
Yes. And maybe they should have gone to blows a little bit. There are some things that Jasimir says to Fi in these moments that are terrible.
Downright terrible.
And I don't say this to defend him, because Jasimir should be held accountable for the horrible things he says.
For sure.
Even if because he does understand that he's doing this to hurt her. I also want to recognize that Jasimir is a kid, and he is lost the one person that he knows cares about him.
Yeah.
He has his mother is gone. He has a fraught relationship with his father. Tavin is really his only... Tavin is like a brother to him.
Very, very much so. I mean, they were raised together.
Yeah, they were raised alongside each other. And now Jasimir has lost that person. And I understand that he is in a place of emotional distress. That does not mean he has the right to take it out on Fi.
Not at all. But they actually almost kind of come to blows. I forgot that Jasimir shoves her. On page 270, they are like...
Is that where you're at? Yeah. Leah's just reading our minds today. I'm really impressed.
Oh, that's so funny.
They are like having it out with each other, and Jasimir says, "F the oath." Jasimir shoved her from behind, the sword tumbling from her grip and clattered to the ground. Fi stood a moment, breathing hard, then she collected the sword and turned slow to face Jasimir, his chin jutted out, eyes burning in the bloody dusk. And they keep going, and Jasimir actually looks afraid of Fi.
Good.
As he should be. And for the first time, both of them he was wholly at her mercy.
And Fi knows she can get rid of Jasimir.
Easily.
She could easily get rid of Jasimir. She could take her teeth, take her sword, and go take her family back.
Yes.
And she chooses not to.
Yes.
Because she is not like Hangdog, right? Like, Hangdog is 2-second clever. If this was Hangdog in this situation, that is absolutely what he would have done.
100%.
He would have turned on Jasimir and gone back to the crows.
But instead, Fi is dragging him to safety to keep the oath.
And Fi knows that this, even if she has to make sacrifices now, she is not 2-second clever. She sees the bigger picture. She and Pa see the bigger picture.
Yes.
Where Hangdog does not. She knows if she can get Jasimir to safety, he is bound by this oath to protect her caste, her people.
Yeah. And we're here for it.
I love that moment of her, because I like that she gets to be angry, but I also like that she knows this is what I need to do. This is my duty to myself and to my people.
On page 272 to 273, Fi goes, "Ken me," she graded out. You will keep your oath. That's what Pa and Tavin gave themselves up for, and you know it. So you and I can walk to Trickavoy nice and quiet, just like they asked. Don't even have to pretend to like each other, or by every dead god, I will drag you to Trickavoy myself. And that's kind of where this chapter ends. However, the thing I want to point out comes in with my annotations, and I will post a picture of this somewhere, but I drew a picture.
Oh, I love it. The little stick figures of Fi dragging Jasimir. I do think it's worth pointing out, I definitely think Jasimir is taller than Fi.
Yes, he's not shorter. He's getting dragged. He's,
yes.
like, not able to walk with her because she is dragging
I see
him.
the perspective that you included in your artistic process.
Thank you. It was very hard.
I am impressed.
Thank you. I'm not an artistic drawer.
But I think it is a very good, What were you going to say, Leah?
I was just gonna... I think it's funny how you say drawer. Drawer.
What do you want me to say?
Just
an
a
artistic
funny word.
artist.
Also, my 2 little notes, I'm going to swear again, but I think it makes sense in context. 1, Fi has been the only one carrying the oath weight up to this point. She has lost literally everything.
Yep.
2, Jazz is being a little bitch, and Fi will carry him through all 12 hells to keep the oath.
Yep. Both of those are accurate and true.
I feel like that is a good summary of what has happened thus far.
But they do make it to Trickavoy.
They do make it to Trickavoy.
I needed to open my notes again. They do make it to Trickavoy, and they meet Master General Draga, and she's like, oh, the prince, he is here. And Draga...
Pause. They're getting chased by the vultures.
Right.
And they are shooting fire at them. So the entire forest outside of Trickavoy is up in flames.
Yes, it is on fire.
And then they get to the doors of Trickavoy, and they see the Master General, who's, like, come out on mammoths, and,
because they ride mammoths.
Yes.
That's their thing.
Yes, they ride mammoths.
That's the whole thing.
And,
we got mammoths here, why not?
Jasimir and Fi are like, how did you know we were here? And she's like...
You lit a fire the size of Jaban, your highness. I'm on page 310. You lit a fire the size of Jaban, your highness, his aunt answered from even higher. Fi could scarce pick her form out of the blur, but she sounded like the sort of woman who enjoyed riding mammoths full tilt at a pack of vultures. And even if you hadn't, I was warned to expect your arrival.
Oh, Fi said, and then eyes shuddering, she fell to the dirt. Draga!
I love her.
I did not like Draga the first time I read this.
Oh, I loved her the moment I saw her.
I did not like her because I felt like she perpetuated the hawkiness.
Yes.
But not the good side of it.
I got you. She definitely does that.
But she definitely grows on you, and she is also very protective of Fi.
Mm-hmm. I had a note about this. I said, despite my misgivings about Draga, this is later when when Fi and Draga and Jasimir are talking about how they're going to rescue the crows in Tavin.
Mm-hmm.
I said, despite some misgivings about Draga, I like that she doesn't hide behind pretty words.
Oh, not at all.
So many other of the high-ranking people have hidden behind their words, and Draga tells it like it is, and I like that about her.
I think part of it is because she is the military leader, right? That just seems like a very military thing. Yeah. But Draga is very, like, this is it.
Yes.
This is also a very small note, but we have Corporal Lakima
show
up, and she's a major minor character in the next book.
She's an important character.
Yes. But Corporal Lakima is very hesitant to help Fi at first in this. And then by the next book, we see a lot more character development.
Yes.
And she is one of my favorite characters. I think we can say it now. I think we can say it.
I think we can say it.
I think we can say it now.
Do you want me to say it?
Yes, you can.
Fi figures it out before the readers figure it out. Well,
we figure it out with Fi.
Yeah. Draga is actually Tavin's mother. And the way that Fi figures it out is she hears Draga humming the same watch song that...
There are a couple things, because she sees a painting of the sisters.
Right.
And then realizes similarities.
Right.
And I think she figures out something else first, and then figures out...
Yeah.
But please continue.
I shall continue. she hears Draga humming the same watch song that Tavin would always hum when he was on watch. And when she asked Tavin about it, Tavin said it was a song that he learned from his mother. And Fi puts those pieces together, which makes the scene where they're talking about what to do about the crows and Tavin even more painful, I think, in retrospect. Because Draga is saying, we cannot go after them. I am not going to risk the prince in order to rescue these people. And there, I can't find it off, unless you want me to look for it, but I'm not going to be able to find it. Point being, Draga's body language is very tense in that scene.
Yes.
Because she is realizing that this isn't just about, like, the prince's bodyguard. This is her son, and, like, her beloved son, honestly.
Her only child. Whom, despite misgivings about Draga, she does really love Tavin. Yes, and the reason the reason she doesn't claim him is to protect him because she is so highly ranked.
Yes.
He would be used against her.
Right.
So, to protect really both of them, she doesn't legally claim him as her son, even though she raised him to be her son.
But I think that really adds some character to her on a reread. Like, I think that might be why I was more accepting of her on a reread, because she's not just saying, oh, like, screw the crows, like, we don't need them. She's, like, this is not an easy decision for her either.
No, not at all.
She has to turn her back on her only family that's left. Because her sister is gone, and presumably the rest of their family is gone. This is her son, and that's all she has left.
At one point, this is a little bit of a tangent, Draga refers to Fi as Lady Merciful. And that is one of my favorite names that Fi gets called, so I got it on a ring and I now wear it.
I think we need to share a picture of the ring.
We will. I think we should also do it, like, with the text.
Yes.
I think that'd be pretty. But that's not relevant to this. But later on, as they're staying in Trickavoy, they get a letter delivered to them, and it contains a pinky finger.
Yep.
And because Fi can
read bones,
she touches it and finds out that it is
Paz.
Unfortunately, he's still alive because
fine.
she can tell that too.
He's just missing fingers.
Yes. I also want to point out that Draga, when reading the letter, says Jasimir's full name.
Oh, does she? What page is that?
325. To Master General Draga Vasily Sans Markan, I, Gregor Tatterhelm, acting in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, order you to surrender the traitor Jasimir Surima Sans Lahadar.
We don't know how to say any of these names.
No.
Lahadar?
Oh, maybe. Should you fail
if
to
you
comply...
say with enough conviction, people will believe it.
This is true. Should you fail to comply, you will share his charges of high treason, conspiracy, fraud, and criminal blasphemy. Moreover, and then this is the scene that we were talking about, right? Where they have the finger, and then when Fi wants to go and get her family back, and is like, you don't, page 326. Easier said when it's not your loss to cut. Don't tell me about my losses, Draga snapped.
Yes.
Don't pretend you give a damn about my caste, Fi hissed back. If Tatterhelm had a dozen hawks, Tatterhelm has. Draga cut herself off, running a hand over her hair. We don't know that Tavin is her son at this point.
Yeah. But she gets so close to saying it.
Oh, like, literally, Tatterhelm has...
my son.
Right. And then they kind of continue a bit, and Fi says, your song will change when you start sending pieces of a hawk. Draga stared at her. Jasimir inhaled sharp at Fi's side, but said not. So,
yes.
we know that Jasimir and Tavin are cousins. Kind of.
Yes.
We can make that assumption that they know.
Yes.
It has not been explicitly stated to us.
Yeah.
Because Jasimir even says Tavin is your blood, not our blood. Just a little bit further down that page. So it has not been explicitly stated to us, but the boys know that they are related.
Yes. Okay. Glad we settled that.
Off mic, we had that argument earlier.
Yeah. Can I go back and say something actually?
Of course.
Because I've been paying attention to the names in this. So we know that Phoenix children get their names from both of their parents, right? Jasimir's name comes from his mother and his father.
And Jasimir.
And also, both times that we see this, there's another Phoenix character where we see how his name comes from his parents.
The
other prince,
Yeah.
Rusana's son.
Yeah.
Rusimir? Rusimir. The mother's name comes first both times. However, I just noticed when we looked at Jasimir's full name, his middle name, question mark, has the beginning of Suramir in it. So I wonder if they also have, your first name comes from your parents, and then you have, a patronymic, is that what it's called? Patronymic? Patronymic. But I don't know where the Surim, the Surim part, that's definitely Suramir.
Yeah.
I don't know where the AS suffix comes from. It could just be, that's just how you end it.
Yeah. Also, this is a total side note, Draga never calls Tavin Tavin. She always calls him Taverin.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I forget that Tavin has, Tavin is a nickname, and then we also call him Tav.
Right, so he has a nickname for his nickname. Love it.
That's kind of how I feel in most of my life, actually. But I digress. That was just something I pointed out while we were looking at that again. I was like,
On page 328, after the line break, at first Fi screamed. She cried out with fury. Then she crumpled with shame. Then, at last, she wept with grief. Draga was right. The whole Crow cast hung on Jasimir reaching the throne. Jasimir was right. He understood what was at stake. Tavin was right. He could have done something better with his life than die. But what happens next?
Fi goes to rescue them. Fi concocts a plan, and we don't see her concocting the plan.
We just see the plan in action.
Which is actually very much like the end of Little Thieves.
Yes.
Without saying anything more about that. But I like it when stories... I feel like sometimes when you get these kinds of scenes in stories, you get the planning and then you get the execution. I like it when the execution happens without us knowing the planning.
Yeah.
So...
she brings Jasimir to the vultures that have been hunting them.
Yes. She brings him to make an exchange.
Him for her crows. And Tavin.
Yeah.
Honorary crow.
Yep, honorary crow. I can agree with that.
But and we think, she's
turning on them.
She's chosen her family. And, you know what? She has every right to do that. We're not angry. I wasn't angry with her the first time I read this. But then we find out that's not all she has up her sleeve. Because they check Fi for weapons and teeth, of course.
Yeah.
But what they don't check is... Do you want to say that, Leah?
Jasimir is holding a tooth.
Yes.
That's crazy.
And a sword at his spine.
Yeah.
They don't check him because,
he's the prisoner.
Yeah.
Why would she give her prisoner
he
weapons?
He wouldn't have anything.
She hides a phoenix tooth in, the...
I don't remember where.
Whatever is binding his hands. There we go.
Bonding his hands?
Bonding his hands. They are bonding.
It was close.
Take one vowel off.
340.
340. If you're following along at home, we are on page 340.
Fi wet her lips and forced the last of her breath into an ear-splitting whistle. If Tavin were a crow, he'd know that whistle signal. It meant drop. If Tavin were the prince, he'd know what was coming. And if Tavin were only a hawk, he would have died when Fi loosed the phoenix tooth that had burned hidden in Jasimir's bound fists all along. But Tavin wasn't only a hawk.
So she summons this fire from Jasimir's spawns, and her people know, hit the ground, hit the floor. But Tavin doesn't know that, but she knows he's going to be okay, because not only has she figured out that he's Draga's son, she's also figured out the other half of the equation.
Which is
He's part Phoenix.
Not just part any Phoenix.
No.
Which?
No!
No! He's son of the...
King.
Yes!
He's got a lot hidden up his sleeve.
He's got a lot of baggage.
I mean, understandably. And everything turns out fine. I don't feel bad just kind of glossing over what happens next, because everything is fine.
But can I talk about... Where did it go?
Page 343.
Yep, 343.
At the bottom of the page.
So this is after, like, they've taken down the vultures. The very bottom of the page, 343. Jasimir had pushed himself up on one leg, clinging to the wall. His eyes landed on Tavin and the telltale flames nipping harmlessly at his arms. You're a phoenix. Tavin flinched, eyes on the ground. I'm a bastard. He's your brother, Fi finished, hoarse, and sawed at the bonds about Tavin's wrists. Half, at least. Tavin looked at her then, as the rope fell free.
Can I read this part?
Yes, you can.
Because we're going back to what she wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she wanted to burn away the anger and shame in his eyes. She wanted him to heal himself as he had before. She wanted his hand in hers. She wanted him to forgive her for risking his king, for laying his secret bare, for letting him fall to Tatterhelm to begin with. But she was a chief, and her own were not out of the valley yet. It'll be all right, she lied and cut the slaughter bell from his neck. An open hand reached into the space between them. Tavin blinked at the prince, then took it. Jasimir wobbled and embraced his brother. I should have seen it, Jasimir mumbled. I didn't want to. I'm sorry. Tavin didn't answer, but neither did he let go, and in his way, that was answer enough.
Because both boys have always looked similar, right? That is why Tavin is originally chosen to be Jasimir's guard. And their mothers are twins.
So biologically, they are full siblings. Because they're the sisters are identical twins.
Yes.
Is what we're led to believe.
Mm-hmm.
I have so many feelings. So we continue going. We find out that Vimo has turned on Tatterhelm and did not alert him to the Mammoth Riders coming in.
Can I say something else?
Yes.
Before we go on to that, I'm sorry. I just want to point out, Jasimir says you're Phoenix. He points out Tavin's power.
Yes.
Tavin looks at himself and says, I'm a bastard. He points out his flaws and his failings.
Right.
Fi says he's your brother, and she points out the family bond. Because that makes sense, right? Her whole life is about her family. I keep hitting the table, I'm so sorry. Her whole life is about family.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that these are the things that they each point out. And, like, this, Fi gets the final say, and those things don't matter. What matters
100%.
is you have each other.
Yes. So they continue on. Everybody's safe. We get to kind of the end of the book. And Fi is really nervous that Tavin is not going to forgive her.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And she spends a lot of time kind of wallowing on this.
Yeah.
And
understandably, because she did just expose him.
Yes, very much
but
so.
She also saved his life. So I think it's a good risk that she took, but I can understand her fear. And I could also understand if Tavin was upset.
Yes. But he's not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is not at all upset with her. And
can we go back just
yes,
real quick?
What page?
346. So this is right after she kind of saves them. The Mammoth Riders come in, and Draga is like, "What in the world were you thinking? Like, this is not cool." And then her crows, Fi's crows, one at a time, step in front of her to keep her from Draga. And like, I think Jazz steps forward and Tavin steps forward too, I think. And Draga is just like, out of my way. And Wretch, one of the crows, is like, you will not lay a finger on her. Do not touch her.
Wretch.
This is why we love Wretch, because Wretch is like, women protect women, and we are here for it.
Yeah, she's like, it was awesome reading that. And then Jasimir takes the blame for it, for making this whole plan. He's like, I made her do this. I commanded her to do this. So I think he really steps up and shows that he's
100%.
grown as a character.
100%.
Which is really cool.
Absolutely.
That's just a really cool scene that you can see, like, the bond that the Crows have, but, like, you can see Jazz stepping up and Tavin stepping up, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to be part of the Crow group. I think they both kind of show
that
they've grown.
Do we want a little comedic relief?
Yes, because we're all just dumping secrets at this point,
yes.
right? And Draga's getting a little, Draga says, anything else? Anyone have another grievance or 5 they feel like compelled to air? Any new secrets to fess up?
Tavin and I slept together, Fi offered, since you're asking. Probably would have come out one way or another. Pa turned a laugh into a cough. Madcap twisted around and crudely gestured their approval. Draga stared at Fi a long, long moment, then muttered, I'm getting back on my mammoth.
That's a whole mood. And then Pa just goes, that went well. That's one of the things I love about these books, though, right? Because they take, like, there's these really tense moments.
Yeah.
And then you just have, like, the comedic relief, which doesn't feel forced. It feels very natural. It feels like how...
Yeah.
I mean, I deal with my problems with comedy. Am I always funny? No. But I do try, and that's what matters. And I think this is a very relatable thing about these books, where, like, you have to break the tension somehow. Someone's gonna say something weird, and you just gotta roll with it.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, like, once they're all settled again in Tricklevoy, Pa and Fi are talking on page 357.
I was gonna talk about this.
And, I'm going to skip the first part and just go into the comedic relief part. Pa sat across from her once more, raised an eyebrow. So, you and the hawk lad. She hid her face in her hands. I don't want to talk about it. And Pa's like, it's nothing to be ashamed about. Like, you saved him, you kept him alive. And she goes, I near got his brother killed, and I paraded his biggest secret across half of Tricklevoy. He hardly even looked at me. I reckon we're done for. And then Pa looks at her and goes, I reckon he started shining to you the moment you punched him. By the time Tatterhelm brought him in, that boy lit up like a torch any time he caught your name. That's a dedicated kind of shine, to be sure. I'd wager some faith on it.
Pa proved my theory. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I also do want to point out, like, when Tavin got caught, Pa mentions this in the part that Rachel kind of skimmed over, but when Tavin got caught, he revealed that he wasn't the prince because he realized that if they thought they had the prince, they were going to kill the Crow hostages. So yes. Tavin gave up himself, gave up his, like, secret in order to protect Fi's family. And not just because they're Fi's family, but because they are people. Like, that. Yeah, this is his duty to his country, right?
Yes, because the hot code is something along the lines of, I will not forsake my country and my crown, and my country always comes first. My nation always comes first. And then if we keep going a little bit further on 358, reckon she missed the cat most, Wretch said. Reckon she missed her pretty hawk boy most, Madcap called from across the room. Which just made me think of Mulan, which is oddly specific, but it's the part with the mother and the grandmother, and they're talking about Shang, and they're like, do you want to stay for dinner? Do you want to stay forever?
And then Fi says, I miss silence, she declared, then relented, scrubbing at her face. And I suppose I missed you lot, too. But also, I shared this theory with Rachel a while back. My theory is, if Fi and Tavin hadn't been a thing, Madcap was totally going to go for him.
Oh, 100%.
That is my theory, and this kind of proves it. But I digress.
360 is when we have Fi and Tavin starting to get their closure. And Tavin and Draga had been talking, and Fi comes in as like, hey, you know, what were you talking about? And Tavin goes that she didn't raise a coward. Tavin's voice rang hollow in Fi's ear. His face stayed blank. What does that mean? She asked, half to drive him to speak again. She wanted to hear his voice. She wanted to know he'd not suffered too much with Tatterhelm. She wanted, to know if he'd forgiven her. It means we should talk somewhere better than here. So then they kind of move around. When his voice cracked, he cleared his throat, but did not pull his hand from the brazier. Flames curled and danced around the lines of his burn scar. When I was 7, the king came to Dragovoy. Mother told me to stay out of sight, but he saw me. I looked exactly like Jazz, and Jasimir knew that about 8 years earlier, on his own wedding night, he'd been drunk enough to command Mother to his bed, while Aunt Jacinda was still at the reception.
What a jerk. Not even jerk. There are stronger words that I would like to use here, but they are not arable.
I can do it.
Okay.
What an asshole. And that's even still putting it lightly.
That is still putting it lightly. There are not enough words in the English language to express my disgust.
Right. So it continues, Mother never fully acknowledged me as her son and heir. It raised too many questions about my father. Yada, yada, yada. Stuff that's kind of important, but not really. Fi makes the connection that he put out the fire in that first Oleander Gentry interaction, and she goes, you put it out. No wonder Fi's phoenix teeth hadn't stopped the flashburn fires outside of Trickavoy. Phoenixes knew how to start fires. Their bastards had to learn how to stop them.
Ooh.
And it continues, and she goes, are you angry with me? Tavin gave her an unreadable look. With you? You've been hiding all this most of your life. It's not like I asked before airing it out far and wide. You saved me from a slow, agonizing death, Fi. 12 hells, you made it look easy. Anger is the opposite of how I feel. If anything, I'm lucky you're still voluntarily in the same fortress as I am. Fi cocked her head, puzzled. He rubbed the back of his neck. Everything that happened with us happened while I was keeping this from you. That's not right. You have every right to hate me. Why? Fi asked. I pretended I was someone I'm not, Tavin said, the words falling too swift and heavy to catch. I know what the king has done to you and yours, what he's allowed to happen. I know what my father is. And I know who you are. Fi met his gaze, steady and unwavering. It felt just like the night they'd met, when she'd stared down his steel. This time, he held the point at his own throat. That doesn't change anything for you? He'd gone stock still. Anything at all? At last she said, if I'd known I'd rutted a half-prince, probably I would have bragged about it more. So we've got this super intense moment, followed by, well, if I knew you were a prince, I would have said a lot more about it.
I just want to say, I really like, I know what my father is, and I know who you are.
Yeah.
Because I think this is something that comes into play more in The Faithless Hawk, and I'm sure I will talk about it because I have a lot of things to say about it. But Tavin is very haunted by his lineage.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he plays it off easily, like he doesn't act bothered by it, it is clear that he is haunted, not necessarily by the fact that he is a bastard, but by the fact that he is the king's son.
Yes. And I think that... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, he and Jasimir both have some things to work out there, and how they work out their relationship to their father, but Tavin clearly has a lot of things that he's working through, and I think this is the first real hint that we see of that.
And something that comes up in The Faithless Hawk that I think mirrors this a lot, specifically Fi's and I Know Who You Are, is that Fi is told that she is not who she was. Mm-hmm. And I think that that is a really big sticking point. But that's pretty much the end.
Then we get a little bit more comic relief.
Yes.
She felt Tavin's too pretty grin. How do you like having a room to yourself? I'm about to like it a whole lot more, she answered, once you help me figure it out where it is. He laughed and scooped her up in his arms as he stood. Yes, Chief. Good scene.
More comedic relief. She then leaves the bedchamber to go talk to Draga.
Wearing Tavin's clothes.
And Draga points it out!
Draga says, hold on. I need to read it. She said, it's been a long day and night, Lady Crow. Don't try me, especially while wearing my beloved son's shirt.
Fi coughed, ears burning, and Draga continues. Like, we don't have to read that part, but
Fi's just like, eh.
Like, that is such a mother-in-law move, and I'm here for it. But then at one point, Draga, like, rubs her hands over her face, and I just underlined it and went, just a tired single ma.
She was just trying to do her best. But I also think Draga approves.
Like, yes. But
she doesn't really express her affection towards
In this
Fi,
one.
but, like, she very clearly does like Fi.
Yeah. And they keep their promise. The crows get hawks to travel
Mhm.
with them. They have 5 volunteer hawks that go, Lakima being one of them. And the kind of trade-off is that she, being Fi, can't take Tavin on the road with her.
Because now his secret has been exposed, and it's not like, you can't let the king's half-son go
Right.
running around with a bunch of crows. It's not a good look.
Right. And that's where the book ends.
Fi sets off down the road.
But we are going to take a break, go
Yeah.
eat some lunch, and then come and record the second episode for The Faithless Hawk.
Yeah.
So please make sure that you are subscribed to all of our social media. Maggie's going to read them off for us because I always forget them.
Yeah, so don't forget that you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and now TikTok,
Woot
which
woot.
is so exciting. You can find us on all of those platforms at Book Expert Pod. They'll be in the description of the podcast. And you can also find us on our website, bookexpertpod.wordpress.com. You can send us an email at notthebookexpert@gmail.com. And we would always appreciate if you really like our show and if you've enjoyed listening, you can leave us a review on Apple or wherever you find your podcasts. And we would love to hear what you think. Feel free to send us notes. Connect with us on the internet. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, we'll catch you next episode, y'all.
Next episode, we'll be talking about the Faceless Hawk. I wonder who that could be referring to.
No idea.
What a surprise.
I'm so in shock.
All right.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Peace out.